Hey, welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Empire Builders, the rise and fall of civilizations. You know, living in New York, you get used to certain rhythms. The grid of the streets, the names of the avenues, the skyline defined by specific, famous towers. We understand how this city works because we know its rules, its history, its leaders. But what if you walked into the heart of a vast, ancient metropolis, a city larger than Rome at its height, and you realized no one, not even its builders, ever wrote down the name of a single king? No list of pharaohs, no emperor's decree, not even a myth about a great founder. You'd be left with one breathtaking, baffling question: who built this? That is the exact mystery that greets us in the Valley of Mexico, just northeast of modern-day Mexico City. Here, rising from the high plain, are the colossal pyramids of Teotihuacan. For centuries, the Aztecs who came later would look upon these ruins with awe, naming it Teotihuacan, which means the city of the gods, or the place where men became gods. They believed the sun and the moon were created here, and they passed down no stories of its human rulers, because perhaps there never were any. This is a story of a civilization that thrived for centuries under a system so different from our own. It forces us to rethink what power and society can even look like. This is the story of the city without a king. Picture this: it's around 100 AD. The Roman Empire is at its peak in Europe, and across the Atlantic, in the Americas, a city is being meticulously planned on a scale the world has rarely seen. Teotihuacan isn't growing organically from a village. It is being willed into existence. At its heart is the central artery, the Avenue of the Dead, running for over 1.5 miles, perfectly oriented. Flanking it, the Pyramid of the Sun, a mountain of stone and earth so massive it remains one of the largest pyramids on the planet. Further down, the slightly smaller but more elegantly proportioned Pyramid of the Moon. And watching over it all, the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, a monument of stunning, intricate stone carvings. This was a city of over 100,000 people at its zenith, a cosmopolitan hub, a spiritual magnet, and an economic powerhouse. But as archaeologists began to peel back the layers, they found something startling. The grandest residences along the Avenue of the Dead weren't palaces for a royal family. They were spacious, beautiful apartment compounds for the city's diverse communities, artisans from Oaxaca, merchants from Veracruz, local families. There is no central, colossal palace, no grand tomb laden with the riches of a single ruler. The city's most lavish art isn't about glorifying a man. It's about depicting gods, like the storm god Tlaloc and the feathered serpent, and about celebrating the system itself. So if there was no king, no emperor sitting in a throne room, how did Teotihuacan work? How do you coordinate the labor of thousands to build pyramids that would stand for millennia? How do you manage trade networks that span a continent or integrate immigrants from distant cultures? The evidence points to a radical idea. Teotihuacan may have been one of the world's first and most successful experiments in collective governance. Think of it not as a monarchy, but as a corporation, or perhaps a very strict, very visionary council. Power seems to have been held by a group of elite families, or by a priestly and administrative class who shared authority. Their legitimacy didn't come from a divine bloodline, but from their ability to maintain order, prosperity, and a sacred covenant with the gods. The city's rigid grid, its standardized apartment compounds, even its mass-produced pottery, it all speaks of a society that valued collective identity over individual glorification. The most famous murals at Teotihuacan don't show conquests of a great warrior. They show a paradise of flowing water, blooming flowers, and benevolent deities. The state's message was one of abundance and harmony, provided you lived within its well-defined structure. And live within it they did, for centuries. Teotihuacan became the engine of Mesoamerica. Its obsidian workshops produced razor-sharp tools and weapons that were traded from the deserts of the north to the jungles of the Maya. Its influence was so profound that we find Teotihuacan-style architecture and art in distant cities. In places like Tikal and Copan, Maya kings would actually adopt the imagery of the Teotihuacan warrior, the feathered serpent, to bolster their own power. It's a fascinating paradox. A city with no known kings became the ultimate symbol of authority for kings everywhere else. They were the silent standard, the benchmark of civilization. But then, Around 550 AD, something went wrong. And here, the mystery deepens. We see signs of trouble. Elite compounds were burned. Specifically, the temples along the Avenue of the Dead and the grand apartment complexes of the ruling class were set ablaze. Statues were violently defaced. This wasn't an invasion from the outside. The city's walls weren't breached by a foreign army. This was a fire that started from within. It looks like a revolt, a systematic dismantling of the very heart of power. The people, or factions within the city, turned on their own governing class. Why? We can guess. Perhaps the rigid system grew too inflexible. Maybe a prolonged drought, evidenced in the lake beds, shattered the covenant of abundance. If the priests could no longer deliver the gods' favor, what was the point of the system? The social contract, so carefully maintained for over 500 years, simply shattered. The city didn't fall overnight. It emptied, slowly, like a clock winding down. The knowledge of its true name and its rulers, if it ever had any, faded into the silence of the stones. Walking through Teotihuacan today, as I did a few years ago, the scale still overwhelms you. Climbing the Pyramid of the Sun leaves you breathless in every sense. But for me, the most powerful moment wasn't at the summit. It was in the quiet, restored rooms of a place called the Palace of the Jaguars. Standing there, looking at the faded murals of a jaguar blowing a conch shell, I wasn't thinking of a king's glory. I was thinking about the anonymous planners, the countless artisans, the families who lived in these compounds. As an engineer and an entrepreneur, I'm obsessed with systems. What makes a complex project hold together? We often default to the idea that you need a single visionary CEO, a charismatic founder. Teotihuacan challenges that completely. It presents a blueprint for a civilization built on a shared idea, a collective project so compelling that it organized tens of thousands of people for centuries. Its greatest innovation wasn't the pyramid, but the social machine that built it. And its ultimate lesson is that any system, no matter how brilliant or balanced, is only as strong as the belief of the people within it. When that belief evaporated, the machine didn't just break. It was taken apart, piece by piece, by the very hands that once sustained it. Teotihuacan's silence is its most profound message. It asks us to look beyond the easy story of kings and conquerors, and to consider the power of the collective, the vision of the anonymous, and the fragile agreements that hold any society, ancient or modern, together. It reminds us that sometimes the most enduring legacies are those built not for a name, but for an idea. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of the City of the Gods. I'm Abnul J. Farabi. If you enjoyed this journey, please do share the episode with someone who loves a good mystery. For more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world, make sure you're following the show. Empire Builders is a production of Light Knot Studios. You can find more of our work and perhaps see a few photos from my own trip to those towering pyramids at lightknotstudios.com. Until next time, take care.